Yeah, it's really frustrating, and really frustrating for Zach in particular. Real freak incident where he, walking out the change room, slipped over and landed on his wrist. So hard for him to take, especially off the back of trying to get as best prepared as possible for this series. And of course, it means that we have to look at things from a selection point of view. I think as a more general thing, I think everything's on the table in terms of selection. We'll weigh everything up when we get to the ground, look at the conditions, look at the surface again, and try and have real clarity going into the game. Yeah, I mean, I had the pleasure of, pleasure, I mentioned this last night, the displeasure almost of facing Jofra in the nets yesterday. He bowled extreme with great pace, looked right at the top of his game, so really excited to see him where he's at. And it's always great to have Ben back in around the group. You know that he's going to come back in and give absolutely everything to the team. So I think it would always give a huge lift having that amount of talent in and around the squad. So very excited for them both to be in and around things again, and looking forward to get going. Yeah, I had a brief look at it. Not been able to get too close to it. We've been sort of held at arm's length a little bit, but it's not the prettiest wicket that I've ever seen, but we all know that doesn't mean it doesn't tell you a huge amount. It's going to be history would suggest here that it is going to be a good wicket for the majority of the game. Spin will come into it, but there hasn't been a huge amount of cricket the last 4 years or 5 years here, even first class cricket in the last year and a half or so. So I think it's really important that we go into the game with an open mind and we play what's right in front of us. So yeah, I think that's going to be a real key component of things. Is making sure that we adapt to what we see when that first ball comes down on Friday. We have since then we've tried to initially try to put some towels down, and then since then they've put something a bit more substantial down for us. We know we've got to be careful. I mean, it's not something you first think about when you turn up to a ground. Is trying not to slip over. It was a real freak accident, and hopefully that'll be the last of it, and no one else can fall to the same fate. Yeah, that was one of my childhood memories. Is in that final day of at the Oval, I happened to be ill, so I managed to sit at home and watch that whole last day of the Ashes series, and obviously the coverage was all on Channel 4. So it was a big part of my childhood. Throughout the summer, turning the telly on, watching the guys go out and play, and then just going in the garden or on the driveway or on the street and trying to emulate all of those players. It was a big part of my childhood. There's a number of ways that we can look at it, a number of different combinations we can go with, and I think that's a really exciting part of it, is that we've now got a number of good players that can bat in different positions, fill different roles. So I think it'd be silly to write anything right now. Yeah, well, I mean that accessibility was, it meant that I could watch all the time and as often as possible whenever the games were on. As I say, it was a huge part of my childhood growing up, turning on the TV and listening to Mambo Number 5. That was always a favourite song purely because it was associated with cricket, Test cricket. So. Those are really fond memories. I look back now and I associate that with growing up playing Test matches in the garden with my family, with my brother, and it was all through watching the coverage. Yeah, I think a lot of sides around the world will look at that series that's just happened in Australia and take huge amount of confidence from it. I think huge credit to India for going there and winning. It's a very difficult place to go and win. We all know that. But it also, I think, teams will see that and will see that it is possible to go and win away from home. And there is a lot of pressure on sides hosting. It'll be the same when we turn up in England and we host some brilliant sides coming over. There is a bit of pressure around that, and we should embrace that challenge. That should excite us. There's so many great opportunities that come with that, and as a side and as individual players, when you're given that opportunity to play, you just got to try and maximise that opportunity. Really try and make that count. And one thing that we have had more recent passes is that competition for places. A bit more depth within our squad and not heavily reliant on certain individuals, which might have been the case a few years ago. So it's really exciting time for the team, and guys have just got to really grasp those opportunities if they get them. I think it's great that all three of them are fit and available for selection. I think that as a whole bowling group, it's going to be really important that we all work together, not single out spinners and separate the seamers away from them. I think collectively, it's going to be really important that we all play our part, and that actually we look at things in partnerships. We look at how, as a bowling group, we're going to take 20 wickets in these conditions, and not put pressure on individuals to try and win games on their own. That's going to be the main mentality for us throughout this series, and individually the responsibility will come onto those guys if given the chance to play, and if the ball's thrown to them, do your job as best as you can for that spell. Pass the spell on to the next guy, keep building pressure all the time, creating as many chances as you can, and keep working together as a unit. Yeah, I think he's a fantastic player. I had the pleasure of playing alongside him for only a couple of games at Yorkshire, and to learn from him, speak to him about batting, his love of the game, it was really interesting. So having played against him as well and been on the wrong end of him, making some huge scores, and being out there for long periods of time, you learn from those kind of innings, and you've seen his importance, the value that he adds to the Indian team, and he's going to be a huge wicket for us. There's no doubt about that. For us, it's going to be at times it might be that we have to try and outpace him and play the long game and see if we can be as mentally strong as he is at the crease when we're out there in the field. But we know he's a fantastic player, and he's got a fantastic record at home in particular. So it's going to be a great challenge to come up against him. I'll just try and play what I see in front of me. I think I won't go out there trying to look to dominate or defend. I will just try and play the ball that's delivered, and if I do that well enough for a period of time, hopefully I'll score some big runs. But he's a fine bowler. He's got a great record in India, and he's probably full of confidence off the back of that series. So I've played against him before. I've scored some runs, and he's probably had the better of me a couple of times as well. And it's going to be a great little battle within the Test match. So they're the contests that you want to try and get the better of. But ultimately, if you're going to score big runs in any series, you're going to have to play all of the bowling well. And just having that ball by ball mentality will probably serve me best throughout. Well, firstly, I look at those three guys and I try and learn as much as I can from them. I think it's obvious that they are three of the leading players in the world and have been for some time, and it'd be silly not to watch how they go about things, how they construct innings, how they manage different passages of play, how they manage their own games as well and keep evolving and getting better all the time, and then try and add that to my own game. They all play the game very differently, have different styles, and I suppose that's the beauty of the sport, is that there's not one right way of batting or bowling. It's that everyone can figure it out for themselves. In terms of those individual battles, for me, that's not the most important thing. It's not something that I will look at. What I will look at is us trying to win this series, and for us to win this series, it's going to take 11 guys. Actually, it'll take us the whole squad at different points coming in together and producing something special over some long, hard periods of play and managing pressure really well for long periods of time. So for me, that's what it's going to be about, is can we collectively pull together, build those partnerships both with bat and ball, and win out here. But that for me is how I'll view this series. For me, as a young lad, I was always very small, so it took me a long time to grow and develop physically. So I had to find a way of getting the ball off the square against the spinners in particular when there wasn't any pace to work with. And the sweep shot was probably the one shot that I could actually generate the most power with. So learning to play that very well was pretty much my only scoring option for a large proportion of my junior career. I think since then, tried to develop my game a little bit more broadly, worked with some brilliant players and some brilliant coaches, and watched a lot of cricket and a lot of guys around the world, how they go about things. And yeah, for me, I suppose it's just understanding, whether you play it on line or on length, depending on the surface, whether the bounce is going to be an issue as much as the lateral movement and turn. Trying to factor all that in and then calculating so the risk is in your favour, if you like. There's minimal risk to playing the shot. But as well, I think my club ground for an English ground, it actually spun quite a lot, quite consistently. So we had a very good overseas pro who had test experience in Nadim Khan, who I got to practice against all the time, speak to about playing spin, and even from being 12, 13 years old, had quite a good education of how to go about that side of the game, that side of batting. No, I haven't. For me, it's about, without trying to sound very boring and cliche, it's about looking after the immediate future, looking after this next series. And it's been nice to come into it off the back of some runs, but that doesn't guarantee anything coming into the next game. And it's taken a long time to play these 100 test matches, probably not as long as a lot of other players have, but it's still a long time, and it'll take a long time to potentially do that again. I look at Sachin as the best player to have played the game, and had the privilege to play against him a couple of times. But ultimately, for me to get anywhere near him, I'll have to play a hell of a lot more Test cricket. And right now, I've just got to concentrate on trying to be the best I can in this series and the next series beyond that, and just keep trying to get better all the time. And hopefully, runs and the rest of it will look after itself. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's quite a lucrative shot, if you like. It's something that generates a lot of runs for me. But I think the conditions and the way that the pitches were in Sri Lanka, that was the lowest risk option for scoring runs. And actually, that was my way of managing the field and combating what they had to offer. It might be that there's more bounce. It might be that there's not as much turn, and it becomes a more dangerous shot out here. And I might have to find a different way of scoring runs. But I suppose that's the art of batting, is trying to implement a game and a strategy of scoring runs on different surfaces. So the challenge here will be assessing what's right in front of us, assessing the attack that they pick, and then just trying to pick it apart and find a way of scoring runs. And it might be that I don't have to sweep as much, or I choose not to sweep as much, but I'll have to find a different way of scoring my runs. And that's the beauty of batting. That's the thing that I really enjoy about it, is that you can't just bank on one way of doing things all the time. You have to look to get better. You have to look at different ways of scoring runs and manipulating the field and trying to get on top of the bowler. And when you come across one of the best sides in the world, especially in their own conditions like India, that challenge is something that I'm really looking forward to.